Welcome to Boxing During Dinner after a, 2-3 week hiatus?
Hiatus. The people missed us. I missed the people.
I feel like we haven't been here in more than a month.
And I feel like the light on the camera is brighter than usual.
It is. I'm kind of blinded, but nonetheless, Boxing During Dinner back here at RANDAZZO'S. Lots to talk about, David, because we missed a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
A lot of big fights. If we have time, we'll cover the ones from a couple weeks ago really quickly. But we do need to start with JuanMa Lopez and Mikey Garcia. And you know, for as bad a year as we've had predicting, as I've had predicting fights, I've completely redeemed myself the last few weeks, especially with Mikey Garcia and JuanMa Lopez, who here on Boxing During Dinner, I said it time and time again. JuanMa was shot, slurring his speech when I saw him last year. I knew it would be an easy win for Mikey Garcia, and it's not to like toot my own horn, because I could give a crap if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, you care.
It's just that...
Who cares?
Not really, but just a little bit.
There we go.
The thing with JuanMa Lopez, David, and I mentioned on the show, I thought it was almost criminal to put him in against a fighter like Mikey Garcia in the condition that he was in. I don't care how good he looked in the weigh-in. I saw a lot of people, buying fool's gold before the fight, saying, "Oh, I haven't seen JuanMa Lopez look so good in the weigh-in," and Mikey Garcia was so drained that he looked like this at the weigh-in. So people, they get easily convinced by this whole thing. Oh, he looks weak. This guy looks strong. Fights are won inside the ring, not at the scales.
To an extent, I did have to think that it could have been cause for concern. Not that it was somehow going to give JuanMa a better opportunity, but that it would take something out of Mikey Garcia, evidently. I mean, you saw some footage that HBO had of Garcia puking after the weigh-in when he already has nothing in his stomach, so that guy's not feeling well. I mean, obviously that's, somebody who can't get any more liquid out of themselves to make weight is not 100%. But Mikey Garcia didn't look like he was missing anything when he finally got into the ring. He rehydrated about a total of 14 pounds, I think, from weigh-in to fight night. And JuanMa Lopez... or Manwa, as
Manwa, as Roy Jones.
Roy Jones is calling him.
Manwa Lopez.
He has fallen off more precipitously than just about any fighter that I can think of in recent years. And it's sad, because you want to think these guys are going to fight well forever, but JuanMa was through a lot of wars. The Salido fights, notwithstanding, but other fights too. Rogers Matagua. His balance was off. That his power was not on display because he's never in position to throw it. That straight left hand, he's fallen in love with it the same way Manny Pacquiao had at a certain point in his career. But JuanMa wasn't even in position to throw it with power, so that even on the occasions it did land, it was always grazing, and that was really his only chances to land power punches, and he couldn't even land them with power.
Yeah, it was sad to see, and this is an example of the cruel part of boxing, because we come here every week and we talk about these big fights and these great fighters and the hype and all that, but the sad reality to boxing is that there's fighters like JuanMa Lopez that have 2 or 3 really tough fights in which they take a lot of punishment, and they're never the same, and you almost hope the guy retires immediately. And I don't want to see him fight anymore, and like you said, he won't, because we were texting the night of the fight, and immediately the first 2 jabs that Mikey Garcia lands, you could tell in JuanMa's face.
They looked like a Rocky movie, like the dramatic, like when Rocky's head is snapping back
and just his
from
face,
Apollo
like
Creed.
that face and wincing of pain, that he was feeling, and it was just so sad to see, because at one time, like he said, JuanMa was a very good fighter. I thought he was on his way to become a top 10 pound for pound fighter. He had everything you needed to be that type of fighter, except for defense apparently, and or too much heart, because he has some boxing skills, he just never really utilized them.
Right, because he relied on his power, and I think that happens to power punchers, is they know that they have a game changer, so they rely on it. And JuanMa is an exhibit A of somebody who lost focus of what his skills were, because he knew his power would change fights. Most of the time it didn't make a difference until it did make a difference.
And before we read some comments from our viewers on Facebook, really quick, I'm one of the people that didn't buy into this whole thing of Mikey Garcia came in overweight to take advantage of the situation and didn't even attempt to lose the weight because he really didn't care. Like I said, the guy was pale. The guy looked drained. The guy was throwing up. This is a case of a guy that could not lose any more weight. His body didn't allow it. Obviously, he's not going to make 126 again. If he does, I think it's a mistake. Kind of like when Brandon Rios decided he wanted to try and stay at 135, and he looked like crap against Richard Abreu. But Mikey Garcia, I don't think he's that type of guy. I mean, if you want to accuse an Adrian Broner or Floyd Mayweather Jr. of doing it, they didn't look in that bad shape when they
weren't making weight.
When they weren't making weight and you know, threw some money at their opponents to be able to still fight. Mikey Garcia looked horrible.
Yeah.
And you know, like Rich Murata, who's been, you know, calling boxing for years and years, he had a good point, because a lot of people were so concerned about how Garcia looked, and like we said earlier, bought into this whole JuanMa looked great, Mikey didn't. Mm-hmm. And Murata made a good point. He said, do you know how many times I saw Eric Morales being carried by his handlers because he couldn't even walk, of how drained he was, and then he put these like masterful Hall of Fame performances. So for Mikey Garcia, it really didn't matter much. But I don't think there's a guy that purposely came into the, you know, with any, you know, bad intent or ill will. You know, I just think it was what it was, and his body just couldn't handle the weight loss.
Well, you just answered a question that was proposed to us by Nima Mir Hashemi, a fan of ours on Facebook. It said, my question, the weight story of Garcia and how the other people see that, was it unprofessional or not a big deal? But he did mention that he got sick the week before the fight, and there are certain instances, and I'm sure that this is going to be the last time that we see Garcia miss weight. One, he should probably go up in class to 130, at least for now. But I don't expect that he's going to make a routine out of getting sick before his fights either. He's proven himself to be a consummate professional time and time again. The way he reacted, you know, he looked sick. It was not as if, you know, he would somehow try to cheat the system and gain an advantage. I'm with you. Professional? Technically, no. But it was not an intentional, you know, break of confidence, you know, in his contract.
I guess professionally, you do gotta, you know, honor your contract, make the weight. Sometimes your body just doesn't allow you to do some things, you know. Yeah. I would love to bench 500 pounds. I can't. I really can't. But I wanted to answer something that Steve Flores wrote.
Go ahead.
He asked how JuanMa was outclassed by Garcia and Salido. Does this mean he was overrated? I don't think he was overrated. Salido's a very tough fighter. A lot of people forget that he was the first guy to beat Robert Guerrero. The decision was overturned because he tested positive. But Salido's a very tough fighter. Just one of these gritty veterans who's, you know, relentless, and he's going to be fighting. He's going to be fighting for another title, the WBO title that he just lost. He's going to be fighting Orlando Cruz, and now the loss now to Garcia, I attribute it more to Garcia being a great fighter, a good boxer, and JuanMa just being way over I guess his hill.
Right.
He's been done, and you know he really needs to retire before he gets hurt.
Yep. So where are we going now?
We're going to Malignaggi Broner because this fight takes place on Saturday, and I feel like these guys have been promoting this fight for the last like 20 years, and it hasn't even been that long.
Yeah.
Just a trash talking that's gone on between these two. You really hope that the fight lives up to expectations and doesn't become a bore fest. Right. Because if after all this talk, I tune in Saturday night and I fall asleep in the 6th round, I'm gonna be angry.
I'm gonna be angry too because I'm gonna be at the fight. I'm flying up to the Barclays Center.
That's right.
I'm flying into New York tomorrow, and we'll be there for the fight on Saturday. You know, Paulie Malignaggi has done something incredible. He's made an entire career out of being a guy who can't crack an egg, but has somehow created a longevity. He's a title belt holder longer than guys he's lost titles to, like Ricky Hatton and Miguel Cotto. Yep. He's holding titles and they're not. Malignaggi can't punch, but he's managed to keep himself in by being a personable guy, a controversial guy, and he rarely comes in and puts on a boring show despite his lack of power. Malignaggi is a grade A boxer, I think, according to a lot of people. Maybe he's slipped a little bit in recent years. His fight against Pablo Cesar Cano would be an evidence of that, perhaps a little bit. But Malignaggi's on the world class. Whether or not that puts him at Broner's level, I think, is a different story. But this is, there are some storylines here. Broner's coming up in size, but I think that he's built pretty logically for 147 pounds, and he's probably going to look bigger than Malignaggi will at that weight. Can Broner carry his power to that weight, and will it make a difference against a guy like Malignaggi, who apparently never gets hurt? And can Malignaggi solve him enough to befuddle Broner throughout the fight? You look at the Daniel Ponce de Leon fight, a lot of people think Broner lost that fight. And what you can really call his only real step up in class and throughout his career. I think that Broner is an elite talent. I think he's going to prove it on Saturday against a guy like Paulie Malignaggi and put on a good performance. But the script is not written on this fight. Yes, I think Broner is there is a reason he's the favorite here. But Malignaggi is a world champion, and he's proven when his back's up against the wall, he always somehow finds a way to come out swinging and put in something.
Yeah, he always puts in a good performance, and like you said, I do agree with you. Broner's a top-notch fighter. A lot of people don't like to admit it because they hate his guts and they think like he's a freaking clown, and he comes in, combing his hair. But that's just his persona. I mean, he wants to be bigger than just an athlete and a boxer. He wants to be Adrian Broner, just like Naseem Hamed was Naseem Hamed, and Mayweather's Mayweather.
But the people who don't like Mayweather are going to really hate Adrian Broner if they don't know him yet.
I am really interested to see what he has at 147, because now all of a sudden Adrian Broner goes from fighting 130 to 135 to all of a sudden being in this elite class of fighters from 140 through 154 that he could either move up, move down, stay there, and fight the Danny Garcias, the Lucas Matisses, Tim Bradley, Juan Marquez. The list goes on and on. Mayweather maybe down the road, or Canelo. Now Broner is the thing I like the most about the move up is that he's gonna try to prove that he is one of the elite, and he is in that class of elite fighters. Because if he starts dodging fighters, people are gonna notice. Because this isn't 130 and 135. That if he fights a guy like
Ricky Burns, maybe.
Ricky Burns, exactly, or El Títere.
Yes.
That that people are gonna be like, oh, but who did he fight? And to the fair-weather boxing fan, nobody knows who Miguel Vasquez is or who Ricky Burns is.
I think that Miguel Vasquez would be a hell of a challenge for Broner at 135. But,
I do too.
But nobody's gonna fight him.
We saw Robert Guerrero when he went to the photo shoot against Floyd Mayweather. It looked like a fighter that was out of shape.
Right.
Wasn't training and had to prepare for a couple months. Not that it really mattered. A lot of guys have done that in the past. Like Roberto Duran used to weigh well over 200 pounds to fight at 154.
Unbelievable.
But Canelo Alvarez looked like he was in masterful shape.
Yeah, he really did. That surprised me. Mayweather, we know, is never out of shape. But Canelo walks around, between 170 and 175 pounds, normally, according to all accounts. To see him come in with the sort of definition that he did, it looks like, from an eyes view, and I could be wrong, it looks like he's already in the maybe mid-160s, which is good because he's got to make it down to 152 for this fight. But it's evidence that he's taking this fight seriously. He's training in Big Bear. Ironically, he's staying at Shane Mosley's house, trying to, get his conditioning up for this fight because he knows that's something that people think he's suspect for. And he will need every ounce of that conditioning against Mayweather. But it bodes well for him that he looks like he's already off to a good start.
And today they also had a photo shoot for Bradley and Juan Manuel Marquez. Bradley looked like he was more Guerrero than Canelo,
Yeah.
even though he does have a six-pack, but it's a little
He's got fat man abs.
It's a little extended. But that's going to be an interesting fight too, because Bradley was just in a war with Provodnikov, and Marquez coming off probably the biggest win of his career. I mean, that knockout of Manny Pacquiao. That's going to be an interesting one for October. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about those fights, to predict these fights.
100.
And as we wind down on these 15 minutes, really quick, what did you think of Gamboa?
I think Gamboa looks ordinary. I think he gets a lot of flack because he puts on uneven performances, but he's still winning fights. He always finds a way to win fights. He's exciting.
Not in his last fight. He wasn't very exciting then.
Right. Actually, you can maybe say his last two fights were kind of ordinary as far as fun goes. I don't know. I think Gamboa, we maybe have seen the best of him, but who knows?
A lot of people would criticize careless Gamboa, who would swing wildly El Ciclón de Guantánamo, the hurricane, and he would throw these these punches, off balance, but he was exciting. I'd rather that Gamboa than the one we saw against Darley Perez.
Yeah, but he fought smart and he didn't get hurt.
He didn't get hurt, and Erislandy Lara showed lots of heart to the Cuban people that follow boxing during dinner, which are plenty.
Yep.
Erislandy Lara proved that he's a top 154 pounder, and he needed a fight like that to prove that he belongs in there with the big boys.
And Amgulo's a big boy.
And he's a big boy, and
Maidana knocks out Lopez.
Whew, great fight. James Kirkland's back in jail.
And next week, who knows what'll happen? We'll see you then.